Hello everybody, this is AFM here with a quick and dirty video response to Egoraptor's recently released Sequelitis, A Link to the Past versus Ocarina of Time. The never-ending debate of which game is better. And first off, before I, I start on my counterpoint video blog, whatever you want to call it, I want to just say that I have nothing against Egoraptor. In fact, I actually love his content. Anything that has to do with Game Grumps, not most of Game Grumps actually. I'm not a big follower of Let's Plays, but the games that interest me, I follow. His awesome series are really funny and hilarious. Even the Sequelitis series, especially Mega Man versus Mega Man X, brilliantly executed that video in particular, full of deep and analytical thoughts on which game or how Mega Man X evolved, and he made it funny in the same time. So I want to just extend these impressions or these quick and dirty impressions to his recently released video here. And in terms of quality, again, it's brilliantly executed. It's kind of funny, actually, that intro sequence in which you have the small little nerd writing the preemptive counterpoint is something that I would almost describe myself of doing. I'm glad I didn't do it and I didn't jump to conclusions. And the other thing is, it like the Mega Man X versus Mega Man Sequelitis, it offers a lot of deep and analytical thoughts on Ocarina of Time versus Link to the Past, and it's a really well done video. The only things that I disagree on in terms of Egoraptor, and this is relevant to what's going on with the video, is his taste in games and his taste in game concepts and or game design in general. And this is really relevant because this is attached to his opinion. I'm going to explain this later. So what we can get from the video in summary is that Link to the Past is, you could say, objectively a better designed game than Ocarina of Time, judging by his many examples that he mentioned in the video. It is a better designed game. Reason being is these are two main things that Egoraptor touched upon, but didn't fully say in terms of bullet points. The first off is A Link to the Past is a template. No, it's not a template. Actually, it's based on a template. It's based on the original Legend of Zelda, which makes it a sequel in the true sense of the form. It's really easy to not easy. It's easier to develop a sequel in terms of starting from scratch. So yeah, and the second thing is the overhead perspective, the 2D overhead perspective. This is something that has been around since the original Legend of Zelda, and A Link to the Past wasn't like a groundbreaking game in terms of a perspective. It was an awesome and brilliantly executed game, you could say. But the perspective has been around ever since the Legend of Zelda, and like I said, it's a template. The game, that's why it's a really easy game to develop. In comparison to Ocarina of Time, obviously, it's the complete opposite. If you could look at Ocarina of Time, it's the template. It's the 3D game. It's one of the first. It's actually the first, along with Super Mario 64, in making a 3D, fully realized 3D world. And the second of all is there was the viewpoint was kind of new back in the day on the N64 and PS1 days. There weren't a lot of 3D games per se. There were like Fox 3D games, like Star Fox, which with the Super FX chips. It wasn't a true 3D game in the sense that you feel the depth of field, and like Egoraptor said, the X and Y and Z axis. Not a lot of games, or there weren't any games before Mario 64 and Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, which has done so in terms of the action adventure genre, at least. Obviously, I think the PC games back then, they were a little, there were a couple of 3D based stuff, but nothing as brilliantly executed or action packed as Ocarina of Time and Mario 64. So this is really, really important, and this is something that Egoraptor failed to look at in the comparisons, and like it gets to one point in my opinion in which I disagree on with Egoraptor's stuff. Basically, all the counterpoints that he said against Ocarina of Time are one of three things. Either they're based on outdated design mechanics, because the game was a template, as I said. Second of all, it's again, delving into his personal tastes in game and game design. And the third of all is something that a lot of people actually not forgot about or don't talk about much. Ocarina of Time was limited in terms of scope when what the developers wanted to do. A lot of stories in the behind the scenes of Ocarina of Time, it was a hellish development cycle. It's almost as bad as what do you call it, Duke Nukem Forever, but obviously Nintendo has more of a creative, more of creative juices compared to what Gearbox or whatever the developers 3D Realms did. So it took, I think, 7 years, 8 years to develop the game, so which is insane, and they had to narrow the scope because they were too ambitious. They thought that the graphics or the N64 power was a lot more than they were getting in the end, Nintendo, and in the end they got short shafted in terms of memory and in terms of scope. They couldn't get the game where they wanted to. It was almost going to be like Fable in terms of design, in which the adult Link portions or the young Link portions actually affect the adult Link portions in every single way. But obviously, what we got is context-sensitive areas. A few areas in Ocarina of Time, young Link, just there were events that were scripted basically that you had to find. But what Nintendo was looking for, in which there's a one-to-one, like if you cut a tree in young Link's portions, the adult Link portion won't have it, or if you plant a seed in anywhere, some of these ideas were left behind, but they are not as ambitious as they thought they were, because they're getting the shorthand of the memory and 64 capabilities. They were actually going to develop it with this 64DD. So yeah, I'm giving them flack because of these three factors, basically the memory space, and it's the first of its kind, and it's a new 3D game. It's the template with Mario 64. So what I think is, I'm looking at it from a different spectrum. Ocarina of Time, like a glass half full spectrum. It did a lot more right in the gaming industry compared to the flaws that Egoraptor showed in his video. Don't get me wrong, his points were actually very valid. Some of the points, at least, when he's comparing A Link to the Past's design in terms of enemy and enemy placement and enemy behavior, and compared to Ocarina of Time. Like I said, reason being is, and Nintendo admits this too, the limited memory space and technology, in which always hinders 3D Zelda games in a way. With A Link to the Past, they didn't have this problem because, like I said, they built it upon the original Legend of Zelda. They already had the template in, and they didn't have any problems thinking of new ways to upgrade and update the template. And they had the ideas in their head, and it was easily done. I don't recall reading something that Link to the Past had a bad development cycle. They had a long development cycle, but not a bad one. Ocarina of Time is widely known, and the game that we got after all that, in my opinion, is something to behold. Like, it's not only my opinion. The sales judge, it's the best selling Zelda game until now, and this opinion extends to the 3D version of Ocarina of Time. It's just the same thing. But I do agree with Egoraptor that in some points in which, yes, there are outdated mechanics and there are weird design choices. But what I don't agree with is his tone and his infliction on how bad these design choices were or are. He thinks that it's like, from what he's talking, or maybe it's his style. It seems that he's really harsh on the game. These flaws to him seem like some game-breaking or major flaws with Ocarina of Time. And in my opinion, it's sort of more like nitpicks. The game did a lot right. Like I said, Z-targeting, the first of its kind. It's a template to the rest of the action games that came to be, even to this very day. And so yeah, that's what I think regarding his. I'm not saying flawed. He does have a couple of good points with his stuff, but it's just like they're not registering in my head because he's underplaying the brilliance of Ocarina of Time. The other thing that I didn't like with Egoraptor's video is the ongoing motif of praising Zelda 1, or the original Legend of Zelda, And obviously dismissing Zelda 2 for some weird reason. Yeah, I didn't care. A lot of people think it's a black sheep, but it's actually a better game than you think. I'm gonna make a separate video about that later. But anyway, if you're gonna praise Zelda 1 and diss on Ocarina of Time, or constructively criticize the game, you're sort of like taking a one-sided argument, because if you want to look back, Zelda 1, I've in my just to give you some perspective, I've played all of the Zelda games. I finished them all except Zelda 1. I've got it through the end, and I'm gonna touch on why basically. I've even finished Zelda 2, so I've played them all and finished them all, except some of the Japanese exclusives, obviously. And I'm a freak about the timeline, so I know where I'm talking. I know what I'm talking about. I know where I'm coming from. So if you're gonna, like I said, if you're gonna pinpoint on Ocarina of Time, you might as well pinpoint on Zelda 1, because Zelda 1 is severely outdated. If you're gonna, we have to go through the same process basically. If I had an animated if I had an animated guy making my videos, or had skill in animation, I would make a video about Zelda 1, because that game is severely outdated. It has a lot of outdated mechanics but like I said, not gonna go in Egoraptor's route and diss the game, because I know Zelda 1 is the template. It's the original. It's what made these overhead titles came to be, the genius of Shigeru Miyamoto. So I'm not gonna give it flack, but I'm gonna point out that it's severely outdated in terms of it's very vague and ambiguous. I know people like Dark Souls, but Dark Souls is kind of different. It's a 3D detailed world. You can at least manage or know what you're gonna do. It has a world map. There are some details that can point you in the right direction, even though you could get lost. But in Zelda 1, the map is terrible. You don't know where. You have to memorize it pixel by pixel. The map doesn't offer any details of which region is where. And the second of all is the ambiguity of bombing and using your whatever the candle. You don't know which walls to bomb. You don't know which trees to burn, and none of the NPCs in the game offer you any constructive advice on pointing you to the right direction. There are some, a few stuff here and there, but most of them were mistranslated or translated terribly, and you just couldn't get it. And even if they were translated correctly, you just don't know where to go, and that really bothers me with Zelda 1. That's why it's the only one I just couldn't get through. Even when I was little, I tried it recently, I just couldn't get through the game because it's just too ambiguous. And like I said, why is Aaron like pinpointing stuff in Ocarina of Time and praising Zelda 1? My reason being is what I've come to conclusion to is his gaming tastes. People have certain tastes in gaming, and Aaron is more of the type of I want to be lost even if it's too vague for me type of gamer. And there's nothing wrong with these people, don't get me wrong, but in the same time there are limits to this. Dark Souls is an okay game to play, but Zelda 1, if you play it now, it's just like I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody got through the game 100% with all the heart containers, all the secret rooms, and all these things in Zelda 1 without going through a guide, some guide in Nintendo Power or Game Facts or whatnot. I really, whoever does it 100% without anything, without watching anything, or with no reference, I'm going to praise him like no tomorrow, or him or her. I would think that this person is a genius, because Zelda 1 is just too vague. It's even Zelda 2 to me, and even though people call it the black sheep, it aged better than Zelda 1. It's really hard to find a common ground in these debates in which Zelda game is better, because everybody's putting their rose tinted glasses on, preferring one installment over the other. And the same goes with the debate of Link to the Past versus Ocarina of Time. But at the same time, he completely discredits Ocarina of Time, and that's kind of it's wrong to do that. Discredit all the praise that the game, or all the innovations that the game brought, like dark targeting and whatnot. One thing that he discredits, and I did really disagree upon, is the narration and the exposition of Ocarina of Time. He says that there's too many boxes, too many texts, and in order to trigger a certain event or a certain plot point that you have to go through, you have to talk to this guy, talk to this person. To that I say, like, this is another thing that I get, that this is personal preference and gaming tastes. As you know, adventure games since the dawn of time have had this, and Zelda is half adventure, half action. It's always been like that, action slash adventure, with a few RPG elements thrown in. With the 3D games, it expanded the scope. There are more NPCs, more dialogue boxes, more story, more exposition. And Ocarina of Time wouldn't be Ocarina of Time without the NPCs, without the exposition. I want to talk to the Running Man. I want to talk to the Zora King and freeze him out of the ice. You know, that kind of stuff. I want to talk to the windmill guy. You know, these there are iconic characters. The Carpenters. There are iconic characters in Ocarina of Time, even if they don't have a lot of relevance to the story, and some of them do. And even if they forcefully trigger certain events that you have to go through in terms of getting through the main story, they're still part of Ocarina of Time, and that's what made Ocarina of Time unique, in my opinion. Something that Aaron or Egoraptor does not see, and a lot of other gamers see, a lot of other Zelda fans see. It gave birth to storyline in Zelda games, in my opinion. Link to the Past was there were a couple of hints in it, Link to the Past, but Ocarina of Time changed the scope entirely for the series and for gaming in general. It was very ambitious. It tried to be cinematic. Yeah, sure, there were a couple of cinematic PC games back in the day, but Ocarina of Time did it with fully featured 3D graphics, and they tried to do like camera work and direction and exposition. Like I said, the only thing it's missing is voice acting, but it's still a brilliantly executed game from the exposition point of view. And to dismiss that and say that it's a flaw is wrong, in my opinion. I don't think Egoraptor is right with that, because it's not a flaw. A lot of adventure games since the dawn of time have it. You just don't like it. If you don't like it, it's fine, but it's not a flaw. It's not an objective flaw. Opinions are subjective and objective. They have a mix between both, and there's a certain balance that one should find, and it's really hard to find because a lot of people have, like I said, rose-tinted goggles and subjectivity with their opinion. It's always a valid thing to talk about, and a lot of reviews and gaming sites, etc., contain objective and subjective. You can't be purely one of the two, but at the same time, one has to find a certain balance to it if you're talking to the audience in an analytical fashion and trying to analyze point by point and comparing two games to one another. And what I feel from Egoraptor's video, it does, the subjectivity in the video gives a lot of flavor to it. It gives it that's where the humor comes from, and that's where the cute animated scenes come from, and it's awesome. But at the same time, what I think, the subjectivity overwhelms the objectivity with some of his opinions, and that's sort of, I can't look at it but not a flawed opinion, but I can't look at it as a real point, counterpoint, or game versus game opinion in a true fashion. It's hard to get it 100%, but getting it 70% is good. 65-70% is good. But what I think with Egoraptors, it didn't seem like it was really purely objective. A lot of the points that he mentioned, the nitpicks, are actually objective, like in terms of enemy design and enemy AI, but like I said, some of them are restricted to the power of the console, and they, like I said, it's first of its kind. They were groundbreaking. They were trying to break new ground with Ocarina of Time, so that's why I'm sort of giving them the flack there. And at the same time, I was surprised by myself by the 3DS version. I played Ocarina of Time 3D, and it still holds up. I feel that joy and that I felt when I was little, when I played Ocarina of Time, and a lot of people, by judging by the sales of Ocarina of Time 3D, feel that too. It's not just nostalgia towards it. You still see where the brilliance comes from in Ocarina of Time when you play it. Yes, sure, the outdates are more obvious now. When you look at some of the puzzles, they're outdated, they're kind of easy, and some of the mechanics of the game, again, the Z targeting, maybe it's kind of off, not 100%, but in the same time, I have to give it praise to what it still manages to do to people even to this very day. The 3D version has a few touch-ups, and again, attesting to the brilliance is the Master Quest remake or reimagining. What the Master Quest does, it keeps all the environments the same, but completely flip-flop the puzzles. All the rooms are completely different. It's just brilliant. It's like a different game altogether. It was insane to play. I played it for the first time on the 3D version, and it's just really weird to play Ocarina of Time in a different light. So I would implore Egoraptor to try that version, and I would love to see his opinion on that. It would be interesting, actually, and it does get a lot of toughness to it. But at the same time, the core game, it's still great, and like I said, it's not without its flaws and outdates in today's standards. But you can't take away all the innovations that Ocarina of Time has done. And in the same time, I'm surprised that Egoraptor, with all this, didn't touch upon the major flaws of Ocarina of Time, the original version, and a lot of people found back then annoying. Basically, was the unintuitive equipment menu, and how it really affected some of the dungeons, especially the Water Temple and the Shadow Temple. You had to unequip and re-equip the boots, especially the Water Temple. A lot of people still give it a lot of flack because, in it, rightfully so, it deserves it, because it's kind of flawed in the sense you have to press pause, equip the boots, press pause, unequip the boots, equip the hook shot, unequip the hook shot. It was really, really tedious. Even though there were a lot of buttons in the N64 controller, they just couldn't. I don't know why they managed to screw up the mechanics like that. Thankfully, they fixed it in the 3DS version. It was so well done in the 3DS version. It made the water and shadow temples less of a pain and a chore. But in the same time, the original version had these as major flaws. The menus were just terrible, and they interfered with the gameplay a lot. So I'm surprised that he didn't mention that, or maybe it slipped his mind. I'm not really sure. But yeah, that's basically my opinion regarding the video. Like I said, in summary, it's a really well executed, thoughtfully done video with really nice points in comparison to A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. But in the same time, there's a lot of rose-tinted goggles, more subjectivity in the video, which favors the classic 2D perspectives games like Zelda 1 and Link to the Past over what the 3D games have done over the years, over what Zelda has become. And a lot of people look at it, like I said, there's another opinion. It's not it's similar to Egoraptor's, but more harsher and a lot more terrible. There's an article that I just can't stand that was written years ago in Kotaku that's called something like, let me check the name. It's yes, Zelda keeps getting worse, but it isn't beyond saving, by Tevis Thompson. So basically, I advise everybody to go read that article, because it, like Egoraptor's video, it's really well written. The writing style is wonderfully executed, but the article is terribly flawed in the sense that the guy, he only cares about the original Legend of Zelda. He says basically his whole argument is like, why can't all Zelda games be like the original Legend of Zelda in every sense and fashion? Basically calls Ocarina of Time a flawed or a terrible Zelda title, and even calls Link to the Past a flawed Zelda title. So I'm just surprised by that. So, it's just one of the opinions that are, very minority of opinions, sort of like prefer the style of the vagueness of the original Zelda of 1, and that just doesn't fly in today's gaming world unless there's some detail provided to it. Like I said, you could liken it to Dark Souls, but Dark Souls at least has a detailed world map. At least it has vague arrows pointing you in certain directions. But Zelda 1 just didn't have any arrows at all. So there is charm to that, but at the same time, it's still outdated. You just don't know what to do in that game. I'm sure I could finish it now, but I just can't stand it. And even though it was, like I said, the originator, that's why I'm not giving it flack. So yeah, that's basically my long-winded reply to Egoraptor's video. And hope I didn't rant on for too long. And I know that I've stuttered a bit, but this is all off the top of my head. I don't have like a certain script with me. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed, and sorry for the awkwardness, and hopefully I could manage to make a cool edited video with gameplay footage which contains all these thoughts in a later date, but these usually take me a while. I'm still learning. So catch you guys later. Again, go watch his video, it's awesome, but I don't necessarily disagree with I agree with all his points. And catch you guys later. See ya. Bye.